are going to try to talk about machinery safety, how we approach it, and also a little bit about electronic equipment obsolescence. I just want to highlight here that I'm a certified functional safety engineer, certified by TUV. In fact, if you introduce that number there in the TUV database, my very Spanish name will come up. So, how we approach to safety in TVA Leicester? We want to have like 5 principles over the whole process. First one, use common sense. If something seems to be dangerous, it probably is. Then we want to reevaluate risks. In the same way that a joke was very funny 20 years ago and now it could be even offensive, something that was perfectly safe 30 years ago, it might not be that safe today. Apply the basics. If you are evaluating risks, let's follow the basics. Don't try to rush. Start from the beginning. Work closely with you. You are the machine owners. You are the ones that are going to be also accountable for any accidents as well. You know better how something is operated. And provide the supporting documentation, because you will need it. So let's apply the basics and use common sense. Let's start. Why is safety important? This extract from the Health and Safety Act at Work from 1974 is quite clear. It's a duty of every employer to ensure, as far as reasonably practicable, health, safety, and welfare at work of all his employees. Machinery safety is there to help you achieve that goal. To make sure that everyone goes back home unharmed, and also that the machine is not damaged by a malfunction. And let me be clear, it's also there to prevent you being fined by HSE, and it's not there to make anyone's life miserable. And you cannot imagine how many people, operators of the machine, think that way. Those are the ones that are likely to bypass the safety. Right, that's beautiful for brand new machines, but what happens when I am modifying an existing machine? It has to comply with the power and the loader, if it's a crane, and all the standard regulation. If you are substantially modifying the control of the machine, the example that they give is if you are bringing automatic control to a manual machine. That's a very substantial modification. It has to comply with the current regulation. Same if you are substantially modifying how the machine supervises the safety. Oh no, the machine is operating exactly the same that it was. Yes, but you have substantially changed the way that you supervise the safety. It has to comply with current regulations. You might have noticed that I have highlighted the word substantial. So, how much is substantial? They don't really say. If you think about it, it's almost impossible. There are so many machines. The industry is so big that the regulation cannot tell you how to quantify substantial. So it's up to you. It's up to the people doing the assessment. It's up to the people doing the design. Can safety be bypassed? Tense moment of reflection. No, it can't. It shouldn't be modified.
You asked the wrong question.
Yeah. Well, I would say it can't. Yeah, it should be. It shouldn't. But bear in mind that you are responsible for your employees. There are cases documented of owners and managers sentenced to prison because something that their employees did. Bear this in mind. That doesn't mean that you cannot bypass the safety systems at all, whatever happened. If you have a machine breakdown, you might need to temporarily bypass it. And if you do it, you need to put in place all the measures to make sure that everything is safe and nobody is going to be harmed. Temporarily. You bypass it, fix the machine, bring everything back to normality, and carry on. where do we start with safety? With a risk assessment. A risk assessment is not just a piece of paper. A risk assessment is something that we do on a daily basis. Think about when you are going to cross a road. You stop, look both ways, and decide if you can cross or not. That is a risk assessment. You stop. You assess. There's a bus coming. That's a hazard. If I cross, what will happen to me? Probably death. That's a consequence. Is it a high risk for me? But pretty high. So you put a control measure. I won't cross. I will wait. That is a risk assessment itself. You do it on a daily basis. Do it also at work. I have just mentioned about providing control measures to avoid the hazards materializing. This is the risk reduction hierarchy. First, you will always try to eliminate the hazard. An example, if you have a high bay crane has a hoist move. Therefore, you have the hazard of free falling of the hoist. Can you eliminate that hazard? Maybe changing the technology, installing a conveyor system on every single level. There will be no hoist movement, no hazard. That might not be cost effective though. But that will eliminate the hazard. That will be the preferred option. Then you should try to reduce it. Reduce the consequence. If you have an AGV that is moving very fast through a crowded area, you might have broken bones or something if it crashes to people, right? Let's try to reduce the speed of the AGV so the consequence of an accident is not that harsh. That will be a reduction of the risk. Another option, prevent the people to go in there, isolate. Fencing a crane aisle is the typical example. If the people cannot go in, there's no problem. But all of you know that machines break down and you need to go through the fence. So you need to control what situations are dangerous and how to make sure that the machine is safe in all conditions. Here in the control is where functional safety is. Here's where you are going to have your safety devices, e-stops, the PLCs, all those fancy and very expensive yellow and red devices that you all have seen in your panels. And that should be your last point. And you may say, well, hold on, you have PPE and discipline. Yes, but they are complements. Complement to the other four. Because in reality, you could never trust people, to be honest with you. Now, I have mentioned safety device. What is in reality that magical thing called safety device? It's simply an extremely reliable device against dangerous failures. A safety relay that cannot rearm is not a dangerous failure because the machine won't move. The machine is in a safe state. A safety relay with the contacts welded, that is a dangerous failure because the machine can move. An accident can happen even if the safety circuit is asking to stop. There's an extract here from a safety PLC. It gives the PFH number, probability of failure per hour, or dangerous failure per hour, and it's a very weird number, which translated into years, it gives you that this PLC is expected to have a dangerous failure every 14,000 years. It's a little bit over the life expectancy of the PLC. But a safety device itself means nothing. You need a safety system. A safety system is purely a combination of those, which combined gives a combined PFH number of a system of a whole. Now, you can use each of these two standards to calculate this number. Either the ISO 13849, which will give you the PL, performance level, or the IEC 61508, which will give you the seal. They are almost identical. It's just simply the ISO and IEC are a little bit at war. They don't like each other. The numbers or the letters are showing how reliable a system is. The higher the number or the letter, the more reliable it is. You will expect, for instance, that in a nuclear plant, everything will be LE. So the PL and the SIL are just simply user-friendly ways of telling you that PFH, how reliable a safety system is. And I have also mentioned standards. The standards are classified into 3 classes. The more generalistic is the class A. It's the kind of standards that can be applied everywhere, really, like in the case of risk assessment. If you go a little bit more concise in calculations and such, you will get class B, which will be the case of the ISO and the IEC standards that we have seen in the slide before. And if you go to the class C, is literally applying the first 2 classes directly into a very specific technology. In the case, for instance, of the BS-EN 528, that's for cranes or rail-dependent storage and retrieval equipment. And that's safety done. Now it's time to change the mood and remember those who are no longer with us. And yes, you're right. I'm talking about Siemens S5. So you see, Siemens has a very special way of telling that their products are dying. First, they stop putting them in the brochures, so you no longer see that they exist. 2 years later, they actually stop selling it for new projects. So if you have, for instance, a production line with 4 lines and you want to add a 4th, they won't sell you the PLC because that's gone. It's only for spares. And 10 years later, that's it, dead. You are on your own. They won't even pick the phone if you call them having an issue with an S5. But Siemens is not the only one decommissioning their stuff. Rockwell has as well. The most famous ones are PLC2 and PLC5. Those have been the most successful. They're both gone. And obviously, their cousins, PLC3 and 4. And I feel obliged to include, since I have PLC2, 3, 4, and 5, PLC1 in this one. Now, if you have seen any of these things, or if you still have it in your factories, please call the British Museum. This needs to be there. More recently, in fact, last month, Rockwell has stopped and let die the SLC 500. Don't let its shape confuse you, like I was for a long time. They are not the same thing. Contrologics is perfectly up to date. The trick that I use to distinguish them is the power supply. If your power supply is gray, dark gray, and has corners, that's an SLC, and that's discontinued, that's obsolete. If not, you might be fine. The current models that Rockwell is still working with are Contrologics and Compact Logics. They are still fine, they are okay. This doesn't mean that your CPU or your device, even if it's a Compact Logics, is not obsolete, because Compact Logics and Contrologics have been in the market for a while. You might have a Contrologics or a Compact Logics from 15 years ago, which is no longer supported, and you're out as well. But you might be still okay. Might. If you have an SLC, you're dead. And now, the Siemens S7300 is going already through the process. Siemens is telling us that you're going to be in trouble soon. Next year, you cannot buy these controllers. And I'm talking about the latest controllers as well. If you have a 300 installed in the early 2000s, probably you cannot find that CPU anymore. By 2035, the S7300 will be exactly as how the S5 is right now. You're on your own, you cannot modify it. Siemens won't help you if you have problems. Siemens is telling you, start planning for an upgrade. Upgrading within the same family is fine, it's easy. Upgrading from a family to the next one is not that straightforward. So you need to plan ahead. This is what Siemens is telling you. Now, if you're not entirely sure, let's look for some hints in your system. So, do I have obsolete system? Do you use MS-DOS to program? Do you need a blue screen to program? Probably needs updating. I'm fine. I'm using Windows. Yeah, but you need to run it on a 32-bit VM. That's Windows XP. That's not up to date either. Do you have this kind of HMIs or even not HMI whatsoever? That means that it was installed roughly 20 years ago. Needs updating. Do your spare parts have insane price? That's because they are no longer manufactured. You need to bring it to modernity. Does your PLC use Ethernet or still serial? If they don't use Ethernet, they are not from the 21st century. And last but not least, are the drawings handwritten? If not, they are prior 1990s. Keep them, but upgrade the system.